Hello, welcome to James's pre-fight, post-fight MMA show, where we recap all the important things happening in the sport of MMA, and I, your host James, try to explain to you what's going on in the sport and make it as easy as 1, 2, 3 for you to understand. We hope you enjoy the show. Talk about UFC Paris, the UFC's first trip to France and into Paris. Here we're going to have Mike. He and I are going to break down each fight on the top of the card. We're going to go through the top 3 fights on the main card. We're going to go a little bit about storyline, and then we're going to break down the fights, and then we're going to give our quick picks on who we think is going to win. So this is a pretty historical card because the MMA has been banned from France for a very long time. But then January 2020, the French Athletic Commission finally established that they're going to have MMA in the country. The first fight that they had, first major promotion that came in was Bellator. But now the biggest promotion in MMA is coming with UFC Paris, with a pretty good card overall. There's a lot of good fights on the card. You have Nasruddin Imavov's fighting, who's French. You have a couple of Joaquin Buckley. He had the knockout of the year in 2021. But we're going to really dive into our first fight, which is DiChirico versus Roman Kopylov. So I'll read off the tail of the tape, Mike, and then you could take it from there.
Sounds good.
So DiChirico is 13-6. He is 6 feet tall, 74-inch reach, 32 years old, trains and fights out of Rome, Italy, in his own gym that he's the owner of, Gloria Fight Center. He is coming off a very good knockout win over Joaquin Buckley, who I just mentioned before, who's also fighting on this card with a left high kick. Roman Kopylov, he is 8-2 with a 75-inch reach. He is 31 years old, and he trains and fights out of Russia. So you give me your thoughts when you first saw this matchup, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, what immediately jumped off the page to me was that this is a bounce back fight for both these competitors. I think, especially for DiChirico, he's coming off this really disappointing 17-second loss via head kick to Al Hassan last summer in August. And Kopylov's kind of had this disappointing start in the UFC. There was a lot of hype about his striking, but he's been unable to really get off the mat. And I think this is a fight about really whose head's right in this one. And I think there's a lot of talk about the Italian spirit of DiChirico. And I think this is a pretty evenly matched fight. I think both fighters are really going to be risk adverse. They're going to want to look to not get finished because both these fighters have a very high finish rate so far, in the low 80s and high 70s respectively. And I think it's going to be really, if someone slips up, you could see a really disappointing finish. But whoever loses this fight, really not headed in a positive direction. So this is all about the bounce back to me.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with you. If you look at Kopylov's highlights, like you said, there's a lot of striking. And DiChirico, I've seen his he does have a slightly more well-rounded skill set than Kopylov, but like you said, he also he has a high finish rate. He just got finished via head kick, but his fight before that, he had a very nice head kick win himself. And he's He's 4 out of his last 5 are losses. So, and Kopylov, I don't think he has a win in the UFC yet, right?
No, he's 0-2.
Okay, so he's winless. So both guys, like you said, coming with low momentum, and very similar games a little bit. Kopylov is probably a little bit more, slightly more aggressive. And DiChirico, one thing I do like going into this fight is, like you mentioned, Kopylov is 0-2. It's the experience. There's like a huge experience difference between these two.
Yeah, I think that's really the key here. I think in the case of DiChirico, I think that's really why I think he's favored to win the fight. Mm-hmm. I think Kopylov's going to have to surprise a lot of people, and he's really going to have to go all out to win this fight. I think the longer it goes, the more it's going to benefit DiChirico, and it's really a long game, this fight.
Yeah, Also, you were saying like being more risk averse, right? If you're a better, you trust the veteran, right? Because he's come back and he's been in the UFC for a while, so he could probably navigate the
Yeah.
danger a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of, like I said before, is DiChirico going to be afraid? Is Kopylov going to look to be in his head and go after him early?
Hmm.
Because DiChirico hasn't fought in a year, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
been a
going to be it's
while.
going to be just over a year since he last fought, and it was really a devastating loss for him. So, it's got to be a lot of nerves getting back in there because there's a lot on the line for him.
Yeah, I remember we're gonna talk about this guy on a later segment. But Marvin Vettori, he's Italian too, and he is also the same weight class as Jericho. And I do remember there was a time where DiChirico, when he was coming up, there was like quite a bit of he wasn't like Conor McGregor or anything, but he had a lot of hype to him, and it seems like it's derailed, like you said, and he's gonna want to get back to that spot at least to start that momentum again.
Yeah, and I think it's also in different environment. It's going to be in Europe,
Hmm.
not going to be in the Apex with no crowd, no nothing, smaller octagon. So this is going to be a totally different game, a totally different animal, and I think this could be a very very interesting fight. Probably not going to be fight of the night, but the storylines are there, and I think
Yeah,
both these guys really need the victory. So let's see if
yeah,
someone goes for it.
yeah. I expect it to be tactical. Just gonna have some tense moments. Uh, so let's get into our picks. Who you picking? I'll have you go first.
I'm going to go with DiChirico on a very, very close decision. I think that neither competitor is going to find the finish that they're desperately looking for. I think DiChirico is going to be stronger. He's going to
Hmm.
hold on, and I just don't see Kopylov being able to get the significant strike needed to finish this fight. And I see DiChirico holding on, slight striking advantage, gets it done on a tight decision.
I think exactly very similar lines to you. I think it could be a close decision. I do think Kopylov there is going to be a certain point in the fight where he just kind of says I got to go for it. And maybe there'll be a scary moment, like you said, Chirico. It seems like he's going to be more experienced. I think he's the more well-rounded guy. I could see him possibly scoring takedown and just trying to be safe about it. And it's going to be tit for tat on the feet, like you said. So I'm gonna side with the veteran and Titico. So we'll move on to the next fight. This is the fight I've really been excited for. Number one contender in the middleweight division, 185 pounds. Robert Whitaker versus the number two middleweight in the UFC, Martin Vettori. Robert Whitaker is the former UFC champion. He's 24-6. He is 6 feet tall with a 73-inch reach. He's 32 years old, fights out of Sydney, Australia. And then Marvin Vettori's 18-5, 6 foot tall, 74-inch reach. He does represent Italy when he fights, but he trains primarily in Huntington Beach, California, with a very good team with Kelvin Gastelum and Benil Dariush, and he's really taken stride with them. Uh, this is an excellent fight, in my opinion. Robert Whitaker, former champion, yeah, it's kind of like he's 0-2 against Israel. Marvin Vettori's 0-2 against Israel as well, but he's a little bit younger, so you think he has maybe a possible more upside for him. If Whitaker's 32, but you always wonder when is that day gonna come where he just shows up old in the octagon. So, your thoughts, Mike, on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the real thing here is that the stakes of this fight are kind of unclear, right? Because both these competitors have lost to Izzy, and you're kind of fighting to stay at the top.
Mm-hmm.
It's unclear exactly where both these fighters are going from here. And I think for the most part, I mean, you kind of have to look at this is who is this fight more important for, right? Because even if Whitaker's victorious, I don't see him getting the title shot. I just don't necessarily see that happening. And I think really for Vettori, given he's a little bit younger, I think there's really so much more for him to do.
Yeah, in this
Um,
division, right? Yeah.
yeah, and I think this fight's going to really be settled on the ground, and I think it's going to become a matter of who wants it more. And at this stage in his career, and I know that Whitaker, just given his experience, he's well rounded, he's great on the ground. Um, I see Vettori with the upset going against what Vegas is saying,
Uh-huh.
what the pundits are saying. My guts here is that Vettori is going to want it more. He's going to win it on the ground. He's going to survive, and I have him going on to win this fight. This one's going to be by decision too. I don't see anyone getting the finish, but Vettori is going to come out strong. He's going to surprise a lot of people, and I think he's going to pull this one out.
I can see your train of thought. Like, Marvin Vettori, he is like Robert Whitaker's not a small guy. Like Marvin Vettori is like his physical presence is definitely much bigger than Rob's. And he has good pace for Tori, and his wrestling is his. I do think people slightly overrate it sometimes. Like they compare him to like Usman or Kobe Covington,
Yeah.
uh, but he does bring a good pace, so that's kind of all that matters. And he has good size. And like you said, Marvin Vettori, even though he's lost to Israel twice, and Robert Whitaker's also lost to Israel twice, but Marvin, you just get this feeling like, okay, the upside is a little bit higher for him, right? Because he's only fought for the title once, and
Right.
Robert's fought for the title multiple times. Uh, but the motivations, like Robert Whitaker, I always think that ever since he lost to Israel, and it's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, because he went on a win streak after, that he kind of goes in there and it's like, this is a job in the end of the day. This is a job I enjoy, but it's a job. And do you see Marvin Vittori's like social media ever?
Yeah, I mean a little bit of it. I'm not really,
Don't
up to
worry about
date
it.
really on where he's going, where what he's saying, and but I do know he's working hard. And you mentioned he has a really good team, and I think he really wants this fight. And I think you got to give him the advantage here.
The reason why I asked you is because Izzy, his last fight, most recent fight, was very like uneventful, boring essentially.
A lot of people
And
were.
Marvin was like, "You will see a masterpiece when I fight Robert Whitaker, and I will dethrone whoever's champion." And I'll basically, he was like, "I'll make this division great again." And I was like, he brings like a certain intensity. So you pick Marvin Vettori. I'm gonna go the other way. I'm leaning towards Robert Whitaker. I just think that technical wise, he's a lot better than him.
Yeah,
Like Whitaker's, obviously we know Robert Whitaker's striking is very good. Marvin Vettori, I think the X factor would be his size and his tenacity when it comes to the grappling. But for me, the problem is Robert Whitaker has fought like Yoel Romero, Olympic wrestler, Jacare Souza. He was a great in his prime when Rob fought him. Very good grappler. Um, so I think like he kind of beats him in most areas. And one thing I do worry for Marvin Vettori is even though he's like a very very tough guy, it's like when he gets hit by like body kicks and head kicks, or like he gets a little wobbled, or he's never been finished. That's a big part of this fight. He's never been finished. He does show on his face a little bit, like when things start to hurt him. Like it does phase a little bit, but he gets right back to work, so that's a positive on him. That's I just think technically wise, Robert Whitaker is better than him. Of course, like you said, his mindset's going to be a big part, and he has the chin. I mean, he's like never been dropped. I think in the UFC, so they can play a big part.
yeah, and he's really aggressive going for takedowns, and I think without a doubt, absolutely, Whitaker is just better all around fighter, and he's definitely going to this fight as the favorite. But I think that everyone's kind of got their moment in time that's made for them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really being given to Vettori for him to take the next step he needs to take in his career. And if he can't deliver in this moment, and he can't win Europe in this very premium fight night card,
Yeah.
it's really going to be devastating for him. So I just think the stakes, he needs it. He's going to want it, and he's going to go and he's going to take it.
Excellent. I think it's an excellent way of looking at it. So Mike has Marvin Vettori. I have Robert Whitaker. So that's good. I prefer if we differ most of the time. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like what you were listening to, please subscribe to Fans Assemble. And if you can, please give us a rating. Do it for the audio world. They need you.